Welcome back to another episode of Coats in Conversation. If this is your first time here, be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple. Before we get this episode started, this episode is a little bit different than what I've done in the past. And what I mean by that is this episode is probably more geared towards coaches. So we spend about the first 10 to 15 minutes with head track and field coach Courtney Ellis from the St. Louis, Missouri area talking about sports. And then later on in the episode, we get into detail about athlete mental health as it pertains to how coaches can show up in spaces to help athletes. I hope you enjoy this episode. And I'm excited to get this episode started just because we've been able to connect again when I was in the sports world before making the transition over to marriage and family therapy. And so there's different conversations that we sometimes have behind closed doors, but I'm excited to bring this out to the public eye because it's a conversation that I think many athletes and parents can benefit from in addition to coaches. Without further ado, Courtney Ellis, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm blessed, man. I'm happy. I'm just excited. Just waking up every day and just filled with enthusiasm. I'm happy to be able to just do this with you right now and just kind of just have a conversation. That's just the main thing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm doing well.
Absolutely. And I'm thankful that you're taking the time to do this podcast. I think the last time that we saw each other and we were kind of talking about it offline was at Rewire, which was through
Yeah,
Adarian Barr and Mike Kozak of SOAR Fitness over in Columbus, Ohio. And I think that's how we initially got connected was through Adarian Barr. And if y'all don't know Adarian Barr, man, the way that dude thinks is
man,
he's on a different level.
he's a legend.
That's for sure.
Legend.
He's a legend.
Yeah,
He's a
man.
legend. I think that seeing him and how he coached and how he was just helping us understand human movement and how to coach was I think I've been able to use it in other areas of my life. So definitely thankful for Coach Adarian Barr.
For sure.
So
100%.
to get this episode started, I know you've been involved with track and field, but I'm curious to know after working with Coach Darian Barr, how did it influence your coaching and enthusiasm for track and field?
Yeah, I think like after working with him, I think the thing was like it just totally changed my whole mindset and my whole approach to how I coach. Like it just he put you like in the frame of mind to think of stuff from like kind of should I say a realist perspective. It's like we tend to overthink as coaches, as having athletes, as you being an educator, whatever you're doing, whatever field you're in, we tend to kind of overthink sometimes. And I just think with him and just connecting with him and him just, showing me different things and him just and me just having a conversation with him, he just kind of got me to see the simplicity in things, like stop overthinking, stop looking for, things that's not there essentially and start seeing things for what it's worth. Like, what am I watching? What am I actually seeing? How am I responding to what I'm seeing? And it just totally is just like changed, like I said, my whole approach to coaching and just getting athletes to see certain things they may not have seen, having conversations with maybe say my assistants or other coaches, and just, getting them to realize that, hey, we're overthinking this, it doesn't have to be that complicated because it's not. If you're instructing somebody to do something, you don't have to overcomplicate it. You can keep it simple and it's okay. It doesn't have to sound complex. It doesn't have to sound like, a crossword puzzle to try to figure out something that's right in front of, potentially right in front of our faces. And it just got me, to realize that over the years. And it's like, you can't put into words all the things that and all the knowledge that I've gained from him, but it's just he just opened my eyes to a vast world that to me didn't exist. It was always I got to do it by the book. I have to do it this way, and it's it's a lot of ways to skin a cat. but there's also simpler ways to, skin this same cat as well. And that was just one of the things that I really, took from him.
That's spot on, especially when you said keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And I know for me, when he broke it down like that, because I was similar to you, I thought everything had to be by the book when training athletes. But then Coach Barr was like, no, 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 no. Let's break
Yeah.
this down. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
And it was so eye-opening again, as you said, because it's like, wow, where's this been? We've been, I think, in a way, sometimes as coaches, we've been conditioned to think that we have to overcomplicate things when working with athletes, which then sometimes confuses the athlete, and then we're wondering why the athlete hasn't even made any progress in the goals that he or she may have. But
Yeah.
when you just when you peel the skin or peel the onion layers back, it's simple. You know,
It is.
this, just basic movements and how athletes naturally move.
Yes, for sure.
And what things have you learned about yourself over the years of being a coach?
I've just learned, to not take things for granted. Like I say, if we kind of stand along the topic of just simple, just that, let kids and should I say athletes, because some of them, are growing into young adults, just let them be themselves, self-expression is a big thing for me because, at the end of the day, coaches, we want to, be sticklers, we want to be demanding, we want to, be disciplinarians. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that our athletes are athletes. They're people, they're humans. We have to have patience. Certain things going to be trial and error. Just letting kids, one of the things, Coach Barr always tell me, just let them figure it out. They understand it, but it's just sound kind of up to them sometimes to figure it out. And I was one of, I'm one of those people, or was one of those people that just kind of like to have things a certain way. And if they're not getting it, sometimes you can get kind of frustrated, like, why are they not getting it? Or why are they responding this way? But eventually they'll start to catch on. And, they're not, and sometimes them not, figuring certain things out was because of me. It might have been because I complicated it. Like you said, I made it complicated for them and I confused them. And I didn't understand that I was actually confusing them by making things more complicated than it needed to be. And when you dumbed it down, made it a little simpler, kids got to, or athletes should I say, got to start to figure, things out. And it's just like I learned that it's much easier for me now. It's like coaching is not, I would say, as stressful. I mean, you do, have your times where it gets kind of tense here and there, but at the same time, I'm more laid back now. I'm not as, like I just have fun with it more. I've learned to just you got to have fun with these things. Like the kids that laugh at me, they'll think, I'm a hard coach and he yells, but I really do it out of love and I do it out of fun. Like if I know if it makes the kids laugh, they get a kick out of it, then at the end of the day, that's enough for me. But as long as they're learning along the way, as long as I'm able to be there correcting these mistakes and just helping them along their path and they're getting better as people, then at the end of the day that's all I can take away
Mm.
from this coaching and educating as a whole.
You hit a good point as far as you'd mentioned allowing athletes to figure it out for
Yeah.
themselves. And I'm curious to know if you can think back maybe before implementing this new style of coaching and training, where you're at presently versus how you used to do things, have you seen a shift in the athlete's demeanor and how they interact with you now that you've basically giving them some type of autonomy over their own performance and learning?
Yeah, I can say a little bit. I can say one of the things. I mean, as a coach, I've always kind of considered myself like a player's coach per se. I really always have pride myself on building good relationships with athletes. I kind of think it's the shift in the type of kids as well. Coming from a school like Live for Life where it was kind of more inner city kid. They kind of went through a little more behind the scenes, you know what I'm saying? Just stuff outside of school and off the track, off the court. They kind of, experience more things than the kids that maybe should I say, I have now, even though those kids are still, going through similar experience. But I think it's kind of been like the setting has changed. So just the overall approach for me has just changed a little bit. And I kind of think it's getting, you know, probably a little bit different response from the kids. I mean, it's kind of along the same lines. Kids still, gravitate. I still have a decent relationship with the kids. But I think actually at my older school, it was a little bit kind of more personal because the things and the resources that the kids had and the things that, some of the things that I had to do for certain athletes was just kind of a little bit more personal than it is not now. Not saying I'm not still building that same connection, but it's a little bit different. And my style, and I actually, the funny thing is, and I don't mean to, be long-winded, but the funny thing is I kind of got connected with a Darian my last couple of years coaching at Live for Life. So I was actually able to implement some of those things. So actually the switch actually started while I was actually still there. Like I just remember like one year we were warming up and it was like a 1 minute warm up and I had like the kids do, like the active squat. So I taught a PE class there. So I was a PE teacher there at Live for Life. And part of the warm up was the active squat, the PE classes. Now, just imagine kids going to, what I'm saying, physical education, a PE class, and they're coming in doing the active squat, and then they would do the squat hops, like we would call it, like these squat jumps, like they would do like the squat jumps out of the squat position, and that was their warm up every day. And the funny thing is, like the kids at first was like, kids weren't as receptive. Like, why are we doing squats and all this, just for like a warm up? But as they started doing it, you can see kids' posture start to increase, and you can see the little things, and it was just funny how that just worked out. Like I didn't even have to tell them after a while; they just came in, did the squat hops, and they didn't even know like the benefits of it. They didn't get it then. They probably still don't get it, but I started to see it personally. And it was just one of those things like, just the switch came. And so like during when track season started, like our warm up would literally take like 1 minute or so. Like it needs to be like an active squat. Like if you got in between events or something, like just quick active squat and just go to it. Like we didn't A skip, B skip, all of that. It was just like real simple, but we still got results. Kids were still making the state, PRing, my sprints were doing well. This, it was still was yielding the same results. So it was just like one of them things like, I started to like implement his, philosophies and some of his techniques and practices toward the end of my years at Live Life. And I've kind of carried that over. And it's just been great. And like I said, relationship wise with the kids, I've always had a pretty good relationship with the kids. They can come, talk to me about anything. It's pretty just, open door policy, with me.
And those squat hops or the active squats, them if y'all if anybody listening to this, if you've worked with Adarian Bar, y'all know what you the squats are all about, and it's those are the real deal, especially the ones where you're doing the squatted sprints for 100
Oh
meters.
my God. Jesus. That is
Yeah.
it looks
But
easy,
it
but
looks easy, but you get 50 meters down the track and you're winded already, and it's brings a whole different element to training, which is so unique and so valuable. I think because I think kids want different. They don't
for
want this.
sure.
A lot of kids don't want the same old, same old. Now you have some athletes that kind of like that, very structured environment where every day is the same old, same old. But when you start throwing in different elements of Adarian's, Coach Barr's philosophy, brings a different level of enthusiasm and thinking for the athlete because it's new and it's something that they've never been accustomed to. But going over to switching gears, and I know the main talk today, centering this around athlete mental health. So, how do you or have you identified signs of mental health issues in your athletes, and how do you address them when you notice them?
Yeah, I think the main thing, the first telltale sign, to me, as far as mental health, in some of my athletes, is the drop off in performance. Like the kids or the athlete that comes to practice every day, maybe with a positive attitude, or maybe just with that bubbly personality, and when they're starting to kind of drag, and I kind of see the performance tailing off, and they're just kind of agitated by things that may not have, agitated them before. I can kind of tell right there if mentally is something going on, or just them being closed off. Like for instance, this year, I've had an athlete who was kind of closed off, and he's just a real quiet kid by nature, but you can kind of tell like some of the things that were going on with him kind of started to affect his mental health. And it's funny that we're having this conversation because he actually sent us a message saying, can he take a week off just to kind of, get his mental health back together. And I just think he was just going through a lot, just adjusting to the sprint team, being that he may not have been one of the better athletes, and him just kind of accepting that and his role. And just, last year I was, maybe a part of this group. Now I'm kind of moved down on the totem pole. There are new kids coming in. The ways of just kind of dealing with kids just going through mental health type things. It's just kind of talking with them, kind of just reading body language. I'm real big on nonverbal communication. Just seeing the kid, looking at them actually, in their eyes, seeing how they're, interacting with others, whether they're closed off, whether they, have, an expression on their face that's kind of like, I'm tired, I'm dragging, or I'm feeling drained. Just kind of having that initial talk with them. Hey, just it could be just simple. Hey, how you doing today? Or is everything going okay? Or how you feeling? And they can sometimes open up and share with you, things that may be deeper than what they actually going on with them right now. Or just, if a kid is maybe, having not the best day at school, we've been notified by a teacher or by administration, hey, this kid had this going on, or this kid has that going on. Just mainly just like I said, communicating, with those kids early or initially right away when you kind of started noticing some of those signs, and letting those kids have that space, saying, hey, just take the day off, maybe, what I'm saying, or, let's just try to maybe get through this practice and then assess things after, practice if we can, or if you can't make it through this practice, hey, that's okay. Let's sit down, let's talk about it. Because it's more than just, athletics and sports. Your mental health is important, because if mentally, if you're not feeling, up to do something, or if you have something going on, then that can affect you in other areas. And I don't want that to, cast, a shadow, or just, what I'm saying, rear its ugly head and interfere with, your potential and what you could, potentially have going on. So I think the main thing is just, communicating, just making sure athletes are level headed, making sure, because like I said, they may have something going on at the home, it may be just any little thing. And these are, teens, trying to deal with life and society, trying to navigate it, trying to find themselves, learn themselves, because I'm at a middle school during the day and then I switch over to the high school side. So you're seeing both ends of the spectrum. And those same kids are once in eighth grade. Now they're transitioning in high school. Now they're, freshmen going to sophomores, you're dealing with juniors and seniors. It's all type of, different things, you're dealing with, especially with dealing with kids with different ages. So just the main thing is just keeping them lines of communication open. And just knowing, hey, if a kid maybe, I haven't seen that kid at practice for a couple of days, maybe checking on them, seeing what it is that's going on. Maybe it's not that they're skipping out and just, refusing to come. Maybe it actually is something going on mentally with them that's kind of blocking them from, making, the best decisions. But the main thing is just, like I said, talking to them and just having that, conversation face to face. I like to have more interaction face to face, because then I can kind of look at you and, I could kind of tell, hey, maybe, read some signs. Maybe this kid is not doing too well. And hopefully that they're able to open up to me, or even maybe not me, another coach, and just let us know kind of what's going on with them.
Man, there were so many gems in what you just said. And the fact that you said opening up space for athletes, I think that, I mean, now that I'm on the marriage and family therapy side, where I am working with people with mental health issues and, talking with athletes about their experiences around mental health, sometimes, and one of the things that sometimes comes up is, well, we didn't have the space to vent or vocalize what we were feeling. And when you have an environment that isn't open or accepting of athletes just coming to talk to a coach and they're like, "Hey coach, I'm just really not feeling it," or "Hey, my parents are going through it at home, mom's going through it at home, dad's going," whatever the case may be, then you have this level of kind of like this barrier of learning and growing even more with an athlete because they're suppressing or hiding things from you. So it's like, as a coach, you have no idea how to approach or give that athlete what he or she needs because they're not telling you everything that's going on at home. So I'm appreciative and I'm encouraged by the fact that you said opening up space and just communicating face to face. Got to say that again, communicating face to face, because we are in this era where a lot of athletes, and we'll say generations before us, they do tend to communicate via text message. And I was talking to a coach in prior episode, and he was telling me about how, he can text an athlete 5 different instructions on what the coach wants he or she to do, and the athlete's boom, knocks it out of the park. But if he's face to face and communicating with it, the athlete may get 2 of the 5 right. And so we are in a different era of just like communication style with the athlete, but I'm excited to know that you talk to your athletes face to face and then also open up that space for them face to face. And I'm curious, kind of piggybacking on that question, of identifying mental health issues within your team, is there ever been a time where you've also have needed to open up that space for other coaches? And the reason why I asked that question, because as well, I'll just say us men, sometimes we're just like, nah, we're good, we don't need to talk to anybody. So I'm curious to know if you've ever had to open up spaces for either, if you have male or female coaches on your staff, that you've had to open up space to see what's going on in their own lives.
Yeah, definitely. Like again, coaches, they're human as well, and they go through human emotions, and they have things, outside of their profession and their coaching that they deal with as well, that they may bring to them to the field as well, and just kind of giving them, maybe I would say like a ear to listen to. I'm real good at just being a listener, just being there for them. Just listening to what maybe they have, going on, and just maybe offering support here and there, for whatever it is that they might be dealing with. But the main thing is, yeah, a lot of my assistants, that I've had, being the head or just being assistant and listening to other coaches, definitely allowing them the space to vent. I definitely have had instances where other coaches may have had something going on, and that could have been a team thing, could have been possibly with other coaches. You know what I'm saying? Just like simple disagreements or whatever the case may be. It didn't have to necessarily be a disagreement, but it just could have been something going on with another coach, and them just having trouble communicating or conveying those messages, and just kind of listening and just kind of coming up with a possible solution to the problem. But I'm always one for just hearing everybody out and listening to people speak, because the more that people tend to speak and open up and kind of just dive into what they have going on, the more you may find out that you didn't actually know what's actually happening, whether they want to tell you or not. The more they speak, if they feel like, hey, I have somebody actually here that's going to listen, maybe not the people that I'm around every day, maybe not a family member, maybe not somebody close to me, I have another coach here that could, potentially listening to what I got going on, hearing me out, they may open up and share some things with you as well. Because, like I said, they have things going on. We're all people, and we all deal with real life issues, and we need to be, I think, here for each other. Be that one big family. If we call ourselves a family in the huddle and say, family on three, family on me, then we do need to act, not act. We do need to conduct ourselves as a family. Like I really take heed to that. Like if we're a family here, we're a family all the time. It's not just on the court at basketball practice and see you later. It's hey, when basketball practice is not going on, when the ball stop bouncing, when there's not people run on the track, we're still here. We're still, communicating. We're still able to talk, whether that's via message, phone conversation, in person, whatever the case may be. Yeah, we as a coaching staff, we talk all the time, and it necessarily doesn't even have to be about sports. It could be just about family stuff and life stuff. We have coaches that have kids, playing collegiate sports, coaches that have kids playing high school sports, coaches that have kids doing a variety of different things, coaches that actually have coached their own kids on the team that I've, been coaching with. And it's just those simple, little things. We just talk about, and discuss those things. Or if we share a favorite sports team or, a favorite food or whatever the case may be, whatever we share in common, just being able to, discuss that and just being there for them, maybe in their time of need.
The power of human connection, the power of
Yeah.
relationships. And I'll I say this time and time again, relationships are everything.
Yes.
It's in life we're natural uh we're natural creatures of connection. We want to be connected with other people, and the more and more we feel isolated, and I think COVID was one of the things. A lot of people felt isolated and felt like they weren't heard or seen. And so being able to just connect, like you said, if we call ourselves a family here, we got to call ourselves family everywhere else. And sometimes that's not always the case, but sounds like you've manifested and you've built a culture that is one of allows people to speak their minds, and it allows people to have space to talk about the things that they're going through, but then also it allows the space just to connect, just on not even a sports level, just as a human being, like you said, which I think is so powerful, because at the end of the day, what us coaches go through, we sometimes those emotions seep out onto our athletes.
Oh, for sure.
And,
100%.
and if we're going through something in our own lives, yeah, our coaches, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I know one of my first years of coaching, I was going through something and it came out on my athletes. I yelled and I cursed and I felt so bad, because that's not how I coach. I never yell, I never curse, but I was going through something. So I think coaches being able to have those type of connections is so powerful. And so staying on mental health, and do you feel like the students you work with have adequate access to mental health services? And that's coach teams that you've coached before, or coaches that you or teams that you currently coach?
Uh, as far as adequate, um, maybe, possibly. Like, the thing about it is, I don't 100% know all the resources, but I do know that they, do have, counselors and different people on sites at these different institutions that I've been at that are able to help them. So I would say, like, on site, I think they do. Um, I think that if a student or a student athlete is going through some things, I think that they have someone that they can reach out to, or know I can seek help or find the right person to connect the dots, and talking with someone that may can help me out. I know at Live for Life especially, they did a good job of that, having people on site that the kids can go to just to talk to, having people on site that kids felt comfortable with, that the adults were checking in on certain kids, making sure they had all necessities, make sure they had this and they had that. And I know they do a great job, I think, at STEAM as well. So I think the kids for the most part do have resources. Now, do they have an abundance adequate number? I'm not 100% sure on that, but there is people that they can reach out and talk to if need be. And I think the counselors at STEAM and at Live for Life or at other places do a pretty good job of just kind of, what I'm saying, mapping out the problem, seeing, hey, is this a kid that maybe I need to kind of take in and make sure this kid has X, Y, and Z, and just checking in on them. I think they do a great job of that. And even other coaches, if that potentially be a safe haven for a kid, because kids that do multiple sports have other people that they engage and have relationships throughout their time in high school or whatever, and they can also reach out to them, because those people like yourself have expertise and background in the certain areas. There might be coaches with psychology degrees, there might be a coach who's been in that field before, just real good with that. So yeah, I think for the most part, I found throughout my years that kids that have things going on are able to seek, help if they want it and are able to talk to somebody who's going to listen to them and, try to help them out. Yeah.
I know that generally speaking in our community, seeing a therapist is taboo or
Yeah.
unnecessary. If there are any parents listening and have student athletes suffering from mental health issues, what advice would you give them?
I would say that I wouldn't feel as if, them seeking, maybe a therapist or just a little extra help is just a sign of, weakness. Just because it's not the norm doesn't necessarily mean that it's not something you can't take advantage of. Because I think as, 2023 comes and 2023, we're starting to get to the middle, the latter half of the year, we're in a different time. Society is a little bit different. And coming off of, like you mentioned earlier, with COVID and with people self isolating, a lot of people mentally are just now coming into a space where they're kind of getting back out into the world and interacting with humans. And these kids, like some of these kids missed, their year of middle school or high school, or they missed a year and a half. They had, do this whole virtual thing. And with them having to do that, it took away from that social interaction. And some of these kids, may not have the most social interaction at home or spaces outside of school. So this is their only time to really be, kind of interact socially. And I just think that, parents should realize that if they're going through some things, seeking help is not a bad thing. It's not a crutch. It's not one of those things that, oh, I can't deal with my kid and help my kid out. You shouldn't have to feel like that. You should feel like, hey, maybe they do need to go talk to somebody besides me. There's counselors, or they can go see a therapist, and that's not looked at or frowned upon or saying no. My kid doesn't need to do that, or my kid's not crazy, or my kid is not going through this or going through that. They can use it as that's a release for them. That's somebody that they can extra person that they can go talk to. Express things that they may not want to express with you or that they had before, and y'all just trying to cope with it together. So I think the more people that are kind of involved and helping the situation out, I think can be beneficial for that kid, because mental health is so big nowadays, and it's hard for parents. Parents already dealing with a lot. Some parents have multiple kids, and I just think it's one of those things where if somebody else can maybe step in and help that parent or those adults out, I think the more the merrier. They always say it takes a village, and essentially, and one of the things, one of the guys that used to teach down the Lift Life started a organization actually called the Village, and it was just getting kids together, a mentor group, and just showing them different things, and I think that's so important. A therapist could maybe tap into something that the adult or that caretaker hasn't tapped into, and I think that is important to know that they know, at least know, hey, I have other things outside of maybe, a grandmother, a aunt, a mother, a father. There's other people I can maybe connect with, because I know how busy parents are. You being in coaching and coaching youth. Parents. They have jobs and they maybe trying to take care of other siblings, and they just have a lot going on. And to kind of take some of that stress and burden off of them, if we can, if they can maybe seek somebody, then I would say, use the resources, because like I said, mental health is a thing that's kind of plaguing, our society as a whole. And it's just, kids just need maybe just somebody to talk to and just, keep them, level headed sometimes.
I've said in the past before, as far as mental health being a silent killer, because there's so many people that do go through these things, but just don't have access or any type of outlet. You mentioned something about being able to go and speak to a counselor, psychologist, therapist to decrease some of the stress that parents have. And I think that as stress levels increase, we don't often react to things like we normally would. And so I think to piggyback on what you said, I think it's so important that parents like do go out and seek or try to explore some of those options, because things are different. Like you said, 2023 is so different than back in the early 90s, where you actually sometimes did have a whole village that was able to help with a child or kids, and it's not like that anymore. It seems like as we continue, from 1990s to the early 2000s to now 2023, seems like things have gotten a little bit more isolated to where kids aren't seeing as many aunts, uncles, grandmothers like we used to. And so, point being is, how can we decrease some of the stress that parents go through? And this is definitely an outlet. And then, furthermore, especially when it comes to relationships of what we talk about in marriage and family therapy, is if a kid is going through a situation where the family dynamics aren't as healthy, we also have to think about what that future looks like for that individual in their relationship. So, like, what kind of legacy are we leaving for our children? How healthy do we want their futures to be? So, that's a great point. So, when we, as far as where or how do you think high school coaches can be more proactive with addressing the athlete mental health needs?
Um, I just think identifying it right away. Knowing that, going into, the season and just going in, having a program, whether you're, assistant or a head or even possibly a volunteer, knowing that there's other layers than just this sport, knowing that, hey, as a coach, I'm also, in a sense, a psychologist, a therapist. You wear multiple hats. You're not just in this day and age per se a coach. You wear, like I said, multiple hats. So just going into it with that mindset, knowing that, hey, if I can address this right away before it becomes a bigger problem, then that can essentially be important. Knowing that you too can, uh have an influence, you can have an impact on, this kid's mental health, their approach, things that they may be going through. Maybe you've experienced some of those things, knowing that, hey, we were once these high school students, we were once, growing up, we were once teenagers trying to figure it out, and being able to help them maybe through past experience, or maybe you just know somebody maybe going through the same thing as this particular athlete. But the main thing is kind of just, addressing it right away, kind of seeing the signs, knowing that, hey, even though we still have to coach this team and we still have, things we got to do, we got this practice plan set in place, we can kind of veer off and kind of, stray off just to kind of address this problem that may be a little bit more important. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take, your full practice time, or it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's after something that takes half a season. But if it's going to help that particular, what I'm saying, student athlete, then overall as a whole, it's going to help the whole dynamic of whatever it is essentially that you're, trying to do. And I think it's one of those things, like I said, you have to just understand that nonverbal communication piece, because they're not going to always verbalize what's going on. You're not going to always hear them running down the hall shouting that I have a problem, or it's not a bell that they can ring to say, "Hey, it's mental health." It's coming up. That bell, it's something that you may have to, go seek, or something that you may say, "Hey, that something's a little bit off," or I feel like the energy is not the same, or I'm reciprocating this and I'm not feeling, like I'm getting it back. So you may have to, adjust a few things and just, have those talks, and maybe just too knowing what it is that this, particular student athlete, where they come from, what kind of situation they're in, knowing maybe that's another angle I can use to try to help them, not just maybe going in blind. And sometimes, unfortunately, as coaches, we do have to kind of go in blind because we may not know everything that's going on with the kid. We may not know the whole background. You may not have all the info, but just finding alternate ways to try to help them as best, we can be, one line of defense, because we may see them more than this counselor, more than this therapist. We're with these kids, five. Some programs have, practice on weekends. So you're with these kids 5 to 6 days a week, especially if you have basketball games. You're spending half the day essentially with, some of these kids that get out of school. You go play a basketball game. You're on the bus together. You're in the locker room. You know what I'm saying? You're talking to them before games, after games. So you spend a lot of time with these kids throughout the course of the year, and just kind of getting to know them, knowing, maybe something that's triggered them, or just knowing, certain things about them could help in dealing with, the approach you take going forward to deal with their mental health.
You made a good point, and you said something about coaches wear multiple hats. And For coaches listening to this, I know it can be difficult. It could be overwhelming, when we think about or when coaches think about mental health. It's like, okay, where do we start first? And going back, you said multiple caps, but then you also said picking up on nonverbal cues that the athletes are giving you. For those coaches that are listening, what helped you be more confident or more attuned with your athletes being able to pick up on their nonverbals so you could address certain needs or ask the right questions for those athletes struggling?
I think it's the energy. Energy. I'm a big stickler on energy. I think when a kid comes in, walks in through your door for the first time, and you meet these particular student athletes, you get to know this kid, you understand their personality, and you see that kind of change. I think that's one of the things, that's kind of helped me, reach out to them and maybe get in tune with them a little quicker. Just kind of knowing that energy, this kid's personality, they may be a quiet, shy kid, but they don't conduct themselves quite like this. And knowing that, hey, this is going on, I can see it in their eyes. I can see it just with the overall demeanor. Something's a little bit off. I just think it's one of the more so things you call like reading the room. People would say just kind of, it's just it's hard to describe and put into words, but it's just I'm a people watcher. So I'm just gonna watch your mannerisms, how you conduct yourself. And I know when, hey, wait a minute, that's not how you go about business. Are you doing some things that kind of is just not reflective of the person you are? Now, if that's how you came in through the door, if you came in, one of these people that say, hey, this is kind of a more this athlete's going to be a little more challenging, then we understand that too. It's a different line of challenging and hey, they got something going on, and they could be challenging because something could be going on. But just I think the initial right away, because if you don't, understand or haven't really necessarily monitored and watched the kid or knew the student athlete coming in, then it's kind of hard to pick up on it as the season going on. And as that building, you're just kind of oblivious to it because, maybe I haven't been really paying attention to that kid for whatever reason, or maybe I've just have not put as much time and focus in this kid, which I mean, some coaches, don't get me wrong, have really huge, large teams, and it's hard to kind of build a relationship with every individual person. I do understand that. But like if you have like, basketball programs or even, like a tennis team or maybe soccer, where it's a little bit more of a tighter bond because it's not as many athletes to kind of navigate through, then one of those things, like I said, would be just to look for, the cues when that it kind of this kid, usually smiles or says how you doing, or just it feels like, I can feel their energy is high every day, and now the day they're kind of dragging, or it's just kind of low today, or they've said some things, or just kind of acted out, or just kind of been out of character. It's just not the norm for them, or they just like for instance, I'll give you an example. I had a athlete just this year, and we have a little space like when we go up inside our building, there's benches right there, and it was a couple of days where I see him sitting on the benches and just kind of staring off and glazing, kind of just with like a straight face, like kind of in the space. And one of those things is just kind of like, that kid is something going on. He's thinking about something, and he's just trying to process it, and he's going through a little something. It may not have nothing to do with, anything outside of anything but what's going on the track, but he may not be happy with his performance, and it may be kind of affecting his mental. Just kind of knowing that, hey, this kid just sitting there, and it's just a straightforward, dazed look, knowing that could potentially be something that the kid got like, something on his mind. Knowing that kids have something on their mind and being aware of that, I think has really just kind of been helpful. And I'm not perfect in this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect by any standard in this because it's still stuff that I miss. It's still stuff that I need to get better at. And that's, my growth as a coach that needs to take place for sure. Like every year I could probably get better at trying to help kids with these signs and get better at trying to establish these parameters, this relationship with every kid. But just along my years of experience, just kind of being able to just kind of help them in any manner I can. And that's why, like I said, the coaches that really, you know, are there and are just big on the emotions and sticklers, they can help you too because they can say, "Hey, coach, pull you aside. Say, hey, coach, this kid has this and this and that going on. This, I know because I, personally have that relationship. That also helps too. Just everybody being on the same regard and having maybe the same plan for these particular athletes."
And that's powerful right there. That's powerful right there. So as we wrap up the episode today, again, athlete mental health is something that is the topic of discussion nowadays, especially with the emphasis on anxiety, depression, suicide are some things that often come up. What is one piece that you would want either athletes, coaches, or parents to take away from this episode?
I just want them to take away that, whatever it is that you may be going through, whatever they have bottled up, essentially, it's okay. Stuff can be hashed out through conversation potentially. Everything doesn't have to be bottled up and built up. I think the main thing is just us communicating as people, just being able to have conversations, whether it's just a simple, hey, how you doing today, or everything going okay, or noticing, hey, I like what you did there, or whatever it may be, just having positive affirmations and just being able to uplift somebody, or just having a positive attitude approaching things with that. Your outlook sometimes can determine your input, and just energy coming with a good energy, just being positive, even though times when it's maybe challenging, it may be hard this day, it may not be one of your better days, but not letting it carry over into other spaces. Saying, hey, what I had going on at the workplace, I'm not gonna let it spill over to, my coaching, or what I had going on in school, I'm not gonna let it spill over onto my practice. And as a parent, say, hey, parenting is rough. Don't get me wrong. It can be challenging sometimes. You deal with your fair share of challenges along the way, but knowing that, hey, it's going to be okay. Because before, when you were a kid and you had actual parents, they probably dealt with the same thing. And it was okay because you turned out okay because you're now a coach or educator that has other kids. So you have a sense of, okay, I know the feeling, just being able to connect and know that you were once there in their positions, and there one day, if you can try to get them to see that they're going to be in your position and say, hey, it's going to be okay. Just the main thing is sometimes just take a breath, it's going to be okay. And that is just so simple. It's simple, but it's so effective sometimes, especially when this is high pressure situation and people just nerves are just all over the place. It's stressful. Hey, it's going to be okay. Sometimes, people, adults, kids, teen, they need to hear that sometimes. And I just think that approaching stuff with just the positive attitude and outlook is just definitely, helpful.
Positive vibes and everything's gonna be okay.
For sure.
I like
For
that. I
sure.
like that right
All
there.
day.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where we're all guilty of it. We get far away from positivity, positive vibes, and as my grandmother says, we don't stop and smell the roses. But if
Yeah.
we do, like everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right.
Understand, and I
So
like that. We don't stop and smell the roses. I'm gonna take that with me. I'm gonna put it in my pocket. I'm gonna take that with me. I'm gonna take that with me. A Kendrick quote. I'm definitely gonna take that soundbite with me.
Yeah. But Courtney Ellis, man, I cannot thank you enough for being a beacon of life for those that are around you, for continuing to grow in the space of athletics and coaching, but just bringing positivity yourself, your whole vibe, your whole demeanor. I can feel the energy of how passionate you are to help other students, other coaches. So I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you sharing the experiences that you've gone through because I think it is important as we continue to emphasize athlete mental health. It is very important for other coaches to speak about these things because if us as coaches, or you being a coach, me being a former coach, if we don't talk about these things, athletes won't have the space to feel comfortable and confident to talk about the things that they're going through. So Courtney Ellis, again, I appreciate you being on today and I appreciate everything that you shared.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you, man. It's like I said, it's been a blessing. I appreciate you, and I'm honored you even reached out, to even want to have this conversation. And I can't thank you enough because even like through this conversation, I've grown, and I've just been able to just realize and see certain things, and I can just take that with me. Like it's just this is very very big in our community.
Yes, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. So, with that being said, for the listeners on Apple or Spotify, be sure to share this episode with other coaches, athletes, or parents that could benefit. I think this was a very positive and powerful conversation regarding athlete mental health. And then we also discussed coaches going through mental health struggles as well. If you're viewing this episode on YouTube, be sure to drop a comment below. What was your favorite part on this episode? And be sure to share it with others out there as we continue increasing the conversation around athlete mental health becomes extremely important for others to get involved in this conversation. I know over the past few years this has been a growing topic, but again, if there are coaches out there, if there are athletes or parents out there that have experienced mental health issues, it's important to share some of these experiences with other people. I know how scary it can be. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a conversation that the internet sees. It can be a conversation that you have with loved ones around you. Because the thing is, if we don't speak up, my grandfather once said, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So if you're going through certain things and nobody knows about it, it's hard to help. Most people aren't mind readers. I know some of us wish we could, but most of us aren't mind readers. So if you are going through something, reach out to a friend, reach out to a loved one, reach out to a coach, because at the end of the day, if we can't help you, becomes difficult, especially if you're an athlete, to perform at your highest level and to show up at your highest level. So with that being said, again, I appreciate you listening to this episode of Coats in Conversation with head track and field coach at STEAM Academy, Courtney Ellis. He's also the assistant girls basketball coach. So again, I appreciate you listening and watching this episode. Until next time, have a good one.